The contractions hit Megan Harper like a freight train as she clutched her swollen belly, her knuckles whitening against the hospital bed railings. At 36 weeks pregnant and alone, this wasn't how she had imagined bringing her child into the world. Rain lashed against the windows of Boston Memorial Hospital, mirroring the storm of emotions within her. Just 8 months ago, her life had been perfect. Engaged to Jack Donovan, a promising investment banker, with their first child on the way. Then came the morning she discovered the note on their kitchen counter. "I can't do this, I'm sorry." No explanation, no forwarding address. Just 3 years of her life, erased in 7 words. "Breathe through it, Megan," encouraged the nurse, a kind-faced woman named Rita, who had been checking on her every 15 minutes since she arrived at the maternity ward. "The doctor will be in shortly." Megan nodded, her chestnut hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. She had practiced this moment in birthing classes, but always with Jack by her side, not alone in a hospital room with only her sister's voicemail for company. Penny was stuck in Chicago due to the same storm system currently battering the East Coast, frantically trying to find a flight that would get her to Boston in time. "Your blood pressure is a bit high," Rita noted with a frown. "I'm going to page the on-call obstetrician, Doctor. Reynolds was supposed to be here, but there's been an emergency with another patient." Megan barely registered the nurse's words as another contraction gripped her, stronger than the last. Through gritted teeth, she managed to ask, Who's coming instead?" "Dr. Reed," Rita replied, pressing buttons on the pager. "He's one of our best. Just returned from setting up a maternal health clinic in Tanzania. You're in good hands." The name hit Megan harder than any contraction. Reed. It couldn't be. Boston was a big city with many doctors. Surely life couldn't be this cruel, this coincidental. 4 years had passed since medical school, since she'd walked away from the love of her life to pursue her dreams of becoming a concert pianist in New York. 4 years since she'd looked into those piercing blue eyes and told Ethan Reed that their paths were taking them in different directions. Before she could process this possibility, the door swung open. Time seemed to slow as a tall figure in navy blue scrubs entered, chart in hand, eyes focused on the medical information rather than the patient. "Ms. Harper, I'm Dr. Reed. I understand you're—" The words died on his lips as he looked up, recognition dawning immediately. Those same blue eyes that had once looked at her with such love now widened in shock. "Ethan," Megan whispered, suddenly aware of how she must look. Hair disheveled, face contorted in pain, hugely pregnant, and unmistakably alone. For a moment, neither spoke. The beeping monitors and the storm outside faded into the background as their shared history filled the room like a physical presence. Ethan recovered first, his expression shifting to professional detachment with a speed that told Megan he'd had practice hiding his emotions. "Megan, I didn't realize you were back in Boston." "I moved back 6 months ago," she managed, before another contraction seized her. This one stronger, longer, stealing her breath and her dignity as she cried out. Instantly, Ethan was by her side, doctor mode fully engaged. "Deep breaths. That's it. Let's check how you're progressing." His voice was steady, his hands sure as he examined her with clinical efficiency. The gold Rolex on his wrist caught the light as he worked, a far cry from the medical student who had once worn a plastic watch that turned his skin green. "You're at 7 centimeters, he informed her, pulling off his gloves, moving faster than expected for a first delivery. "How far apart are the contractions?" "About 3 minutes, Rita supplied when Megan couldn't answer. Ethan nodded, making notes in the chart. "The baby's heart rate is strong, but your blood pressure concerns me. I'd like to monitor you closely." He hesitated, then asked the question Megan had been dreading. "Is the father on his way?" Megan closed her eyes, humiliation washing over her. "He's not in the picture." Something flickered across Ethan's face, surprise, perhaps judgment, or maybe pity, before his professional mask returned. "I see. Is there someone we should call?" "My sister Penny is trying to get here from Chicago, but with the storm—" Megan trailed off as another contraction began building. When it passed, she found Ethan studying her with an intensity that made her squirm. "I'll be your doctor today, Megan," he said finally. "Unless you'd prefer I find someone else." The thought of explaining their history to another doctor while in the throes of labor was exhausting. Besides, despite everything, she knew Ethan was brilliant. His hands had always been steady, his mind sharp. "No, it's fine. You're here." "That's what matters." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "All right then. I'll be back to check on you in 30 minutes unless something changes." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about your situation." After he left, Rita busied herself adjusting Megan's IV. "You two know each other?" "We were together in medical school," Megan replied, not wanting to elaborate on how she'd chosen a career in music over the life they'd planned together. How she'd broken not just his heart, but her own in the process. "Wait," Rita's eyes widened. "You were with Dr. Reed, the Dr. Reed. Girl, do you know what he's done since medical school? He's practically a celebrity in the medical world. Started that foundation that builds maternal clinics in developing countries. There was even that profile in Time magazine last year." Megan's chest tightened. She'd seen that magazine in a dentist's office, had stared at Ethan's face on the cover, older but even more handsome, the headline proclaiming him the billionaire doctor saving mothers worldwide. She'd been both proud and devastated, reading about the tech company he'd started in his second year of residency, the medical software that had revolutionized patient care and made him a fortune. He'd achieved everything they'd once dreamed about together, while she had ended up with a failed music career, a failed engagement, and now single motherhood. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of increasing pain as her labor progressed rapidly. Ethan returned as promised, his manner professional but gentle. He never mentioned their past, focusing entirely on bringing her baby safely into the world. Yet Megan caught him watching her sometimes, with an expression she couldn't decipher. "We're getting close," he announced after checking her again. "The baby's in perfect position. You're going to start pushing soon." As if on cue, Megan felt an overwhelming pressure and the unstoppable urge to push. I think it's happening now." Suddenly the room was a flurry of activity. Nurses positioned her legs, Ethan donned a surgical gown, equipment was readied. Through the haze of pain, Megan heard Ethan's calm voice. "On the next contraction, push down into your bottom. That's it. You're doing great." As she bore down with all her strength, a new fear gripped her. "Something's wrong. I can feel it," she gasped between pushes. Ethan's eyes met hers, serious but steady. "The baby's heart rate is dropping slightly with each contraction. It's not uncommon, but I need you to push as effectively as possible. We might need to help the baby out." The next contraction built like a tidal wave. As Megan pushed, the monitors began to alarm. Ethan's voice remained calm, but his movements became more urgent. "The cord might be compressed. Megan, I need one more big push. Then we may need to use vacuum assistance." Summoning every ounce of strength, Megan pushed as the contraction peaked. Through tears of effort, she saw Ethan's expression change to one of concern as he looked at the monitor. "The heart rate is still dropping," he said, reaching for an instrument tray. "We need to get this baby out now." As the room erupted into controlled chaos around her, Megan locked eyes with Ethan, terror coursing through her veins. In that moment, their shared past vanished. He wasn't her ex-boyfriend. He was the doctor who held her baby's life in his hands. "Trust me," he said quietly, just for her to hear. "I won't let anything happen to either of you." And despite everything, Megan did trust him. She had to. "One more push, Megan," Ethan commanded, his voice cutting through her exhaustion. His hands moved with practiced precision as he positioned the vacuum extractor. "The baby needs to come out now." With a primal cry that seemed to come from somewhere beyond herself, Megan summoned her remaining strength. The pain was transcendent, erasing all thought, all memory, all sense of time and place. There was only this moment, this struggle to bring her child safely into the world. "That's it. Keep going," Ethan encouraged, his focus absolute as he worked. "I can see the head. Dark hair just like yours." With one final heroic effort, Megan felt the incredible sensation of her baby leaving her body. A moment of suspended silence followed, then the most beautiful sound she'd ever heard filled the room, the indignant wail of her newborn taking its first breath. "It's a girl," Ethan announced, his professional demeanor briefly cracking to reveal genuine emotion. A beautiful, perfect little girl. Tears streamed down Megan's face as the nurses quickly cleaned her daughter and placed the tiny, squirming bundle on her chest. Through her blurred vision, she took in the reddened face, the shock of dark hair, the impossibly small fingers curled into fists. "Hello, little one," she whispered, overwhelmed by a love so intense it felt like her heart might burst. I'm your mum. Ethan was still working between her legs, delivering the placenta and checking for tears, but Megan barely noticed. Her entire world had narrowed to this 7-pound miracle breathing against her skin. She's perfectly healthy, Rita said, adjusting the blanket around the baby. 10 fingers, 10 toes, strong lungs. What's her name? The question brought Megan back to reality. She and Jack had never finalized a name. After he left, she hadn't been able to face that task alone. Lily, she said, the name coming to her suddenly. Lily Grace Harper. From the foot of the bed, Ethan glanced up. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps. In another lifetime, during late-night conversations about their future, they had talked about children. Lily had been the name they'd both loved for a daughter. It suits her, he said quietly, finishing his work. He stepped back, removing his gloves. You did incredibly well, Megan. Both of you are going to be fine. As the immediate post-birth procedures continued around them, Megan couldn't help but notice how different Ethan looked now. Gone was the passionate, sometimes reckless medical student she'd known. This Ethan moved with confidence and authority. The nurses deferred to him without question, and even in the midst of what had nearly been an emergency, he'd maintained perfect control. Once mother and baby were stabilized, the room gradually emptied until only Ethan remained, updating her chart at the foot of the bed. Thank you, Megan said, breaking the silence, for everything. Ethan looked up, his professional mask softening slightly. I was just doing my job. We both know that's not entirely true. She shifted Lily to her other arm, wincing slightly at the movement. Of all the hospitals in Boston, all the doctors on call, this can't be coincidence. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. Actually, it is. I'm only here for 6 months as a visiting specialist, while the hospital implements my patient management system. Today was my first shift on the maternity ward. He closed the chart. But you're right, it's quite the reunion. Megan studied his face, trying to reconcile this successful, composed man with the passionate student she'd once loved. I saw you in Time magazine last year, the Billionaire doctor. You did it, Ethan, everything we talked about, helping mothers in developing countries, changing healthcare. Not everything, he replied, his gaze steady. The unspoken truth hung between them. They'd planned to do it together. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed on the bedside table. Ethan handed it to her, and she saw Penny's name flashing on the screen. My sister, she explained, answering the call. Penny, yes, she's here, 7 pounds, 3 ounces, Lily Grace. She listened for a moment. Then her face fell. Oh no. Are all flights cancelled? But, she sighed. No, I understand. It's not your fault. The storm. Yes, the hospital has everything I need for now. Hanging up, she fought back tears. Penny can't get a flight until tomorrow at the earliest. The storm has shut down most of the eastern seaboard. Ethan frowned. You were planning to stay with her after discharge? Megan nodded. Just until I get on my feet. My apartment building is being treated for mold. That's why I moved back to Boston, actually. The orchestra I was playing with in New York folded. And then the building issues. It seemed like a sign to come home. She stroked Lily's cheek. I never expected Jack to leave when I told him I was pregnant. We'd been talking about marriage. I thought he'd be happy. She hadn't meant to share so much, but exhaustion had lowered her defenses. To her surprise, Ethan pulled a chair beside her bed and sat down. What happened with your music career? He asked. Last I heard, you were second chair with the New York Philharmonic. The question stung, reminding her of all she'd sacrificed and ultimately lost. I was for almost 3 years. Then budget cuts came. Being pregnant didn't help my case when they were deciding who to keep. She sighed. I've been teaching piano to make ends meet. But with the baby coming... Ethan was silent for a moment, his expression thoughtful. And this Jack, he's completely out of the picture. Completely, she met his gaze directly. I haven't heard from him since he left that note. His parents told me he moved to Seattle, changed his number. They were almost as shocked as I was. She hesitated, then added, I've made peace with it. Lily and I will be fine on our own. Something changed in Ethan's expression, determination perhaps, or decision. He stood up. You should rest. I'll check on you both in a few hours. After he left, Megan dozed fitfully, waking whenever Lily stirred. Each time a nurse came in, she half expected to see Ethan return, but he didn't. By evening, she'd convinced herself that he'd passed her case to another doctor, unwilling to deal with the complications of their shared past. Around 8 o'clock, as she was attempting to eat the hospital's bland dinner one-handed while cradling Lily, there was a knock at her door. Expecting a nurse, she called, "Come in." Instead, Ethan entered, now dressed in dark jeans and a cashmere sweater rather than scrubs. He carried a takeout bag that filled the room with the mouth-watering aroma of Italian food. "I thought you might appreciate real food," he said, setting the bag on her tray table. "It's from Romano's. Still your favorite?" Megan stared at him, stunned that he remembered. Romano's had been their special place during medical school, a tiny family-owned restaurant where they'd celebrated every exam, every milestone. "You didn't have to do that," she said, even as her stomach growled at the scent of garlic and herbs. "I know." He began unpacking containers of pasta, salad, and warm bread. "Consider it a birthday present for Lily." As he arranged the meal, Megan noticed he seemed almost nervous, a stark contrast to his clinical confidence earlier. "Ethan, why are you really here?" He paused, then met her gaze directly. "I've been thinking about your situation. You need somewhere to stay after discharge, somewhere clean and safe for Lily." He took a deep breath. "I have a guest house on my property in Brookline. It's fully furnished, separate from the main house. You and Lily could stay there until your apartment is habitable or you find something else." Megan's mouth fell open. "You can't be serious." "I am." His expression was earnest now, reminiscent of the Ethan she'd known years ago. "It's sitting empty, and you need a place. It makes sense." "Ethan, we haven't spoken in 4 years. The last time we saw each other, I broke your heart. Now you want me and my newborn to move into your guest house?" She shook her head in disbelief. "Why would you do that?" Something flickered in his eyes, pain perhaps, or a memory. "Because once upon a time you were the most important person in my life. Because I know what it's like to be alone when you need someone most." He glanced at Lily, sleeping peacefully in Megan's arms. "And because no child should start their life in a motel room while their mother struggles to find housing." Megan felt tears welling in her eyes. "I can't accept that. It's too much." "Just think about it," he urged, pulling a business card from his wallet and placing it on her table. "My personal number is on the back. The offer stands regardless of our history." As she looked down at the elegant card, Ethan Reed, MD. Founder and CEO, Meditech Solutions. The full reality of their divergent paths hit her. He had become everything he'd dreamed of being, while she— "Your life seems perfect now," she said quietly. "The foundation, the company, the Time magazine cover. You don't need complications like me and Lily." Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Appearances can be deceiving. Success isn't everything I thought it would be." He checked his watch. Platinum, she noticed, another sign of his wealth. "I should go. I have an early conference call with our Tokyo office tomorrow." He headed for the door, then turned back. "For what it's worth, Megan, I think you're incredibly brave. Starting over, having Lily on your own. It takes courage." After he left, Megan stared at the door for a long time, her mind racing with memories and possibilities. The Ethan she'd known had been passionate, but sometimes reckless, brilliant, but often impulsive. This new Ethan, controlled, successful, measured, was almost a stranger to her. Yet as she looked down at her sleeping daughter, she couldn't help but wonder what might have been if she'd made different choices 4 years ago, and what might still be if she found the courage to accept his unexpected offer. 2 days later, Megan stood at the nursery window, watching a nurse finish Lily's final check before discharge. Her body ached, her emotions were raw, and the prospect of leaving the hospital's safe cocoon terrified her. She'd spent the morning making calls to her landlord. The mold remediation would take at least another 2 weeks. To affordable hotels, all booked solid with travelers stranded by the storm, and finally to Penny, delayed again by cancelled flights. "Ready to head home today?" Dr. Reynolds asked, stopping beside her to sign off on Lily's chart. The older woman had taken over Megan's care after the delivery, though Ethan had stopped by briefly during rounds the previous day. "Not exactly," Megan admitted. "My sister's still stuck in Chicago, and my apartment isn't habitable. I'm trying to find a hotel that won't drain my savings in a week." Dr. Reynolds frowned. "That's not ideal for a newborn. No friends who could take you in temporarily?" The question highlighted how isolated Megan had become. After moving to New York, she'd lost touch with most of her Boston friends. Since returning, she'd been too focused on preparing for the baby to rebuild those connections. "I'm working on it," she said vaguely, not wanting to admit she had nowhere to go. As Dr. Reynolds moved on, Megan's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Offer still stands. No strings attached. Ethan." She stared at the message, conflicted. Pride told her to refuse. She'd managed on her own this far and would continue to do so. Yet practicality whispered that a safe, clean place for Lily should outweigh her ego. After another hour of internal debate and one more rejected hotel inquiry, she texted back, "Just until my apartment is ready, we can pay rent." His response came immediately. "No rent. Address is 47 Oakwood Lane, Brookline. I'll have everything ready by 2 p.m. Car service will pick you up at discharge." By early afternoon, Megan found herself in the back of a sleek black town car, Lily secured in her car seat beside her, heading toward one of Boston's most exclusive neighborhoods. The driver, a courteous older man named Frank, explained that he was Dr. Reed's regular driver and had been instructed to help with anything they needed. "Dr. Reed said to tell you he's in meetings until evening," Frank informed her, as they turned into a tree-lined street of sprawling estates. "The guest house is stocked with essentials, and Mrs. Sullivan, the housekeeper, will be available if you need anything." Megan nodded absently, increasingly intimidated as the houses grew larger and more impressive. Finally, they pulled up to a gated entrance where Frank entered a code. As the gate swung open, Megan caught her breath. Ethan's house was a modern mansion of glass and stone, perched on meticulously landscaped grounds, with glimpses of a pool and tennis court visible beyond. The driveway curved past the main residence toward a smaller but still substantial building that Frank identified as the guest house. "This is not what I expected," Megan murmured, as they pulled up to the guest house. She'd known Ethan was wealthy, but this level of luxury was staggering. "Dr. Reed only purchased the property last year," Frank explained, helping her with Lily's car seat. "He's rarely here, to be honest. Travels constantly for the foundation and the company." The guest house proved to be a beautiful two-bedroom cottage with high ceilings, hardwood floors, and expansive windows overlooking a private garden. To Megan's astonishment, not only was it fully furnished in a tasteful, comfortable style, but a beautiful white bassinet had been placed in the master bedroom, along with a changing table stocked with diapers, wipes, and baby clothes still bearing tags. "When did he arrange all this?" she asked, running her hand over the soft bedding in the bassinet. Frank smiled. "Dr. Reed made some calls yesterday. Mrs. Sullivan handled the rest." After helping bring in Megan's few belongings, Frank departed with assurances that he was available any time she needed transportation. Left alone with Lily, Megan wandered through the guest house in disbelief. The refrigerator was stocked with prepared meals, the bathroom supplied with high-end toiletries, and the living room featured a grand piano that made her fingers itch to play. As evening approached, Megan had just finished feeding Lily when a knock came at the door. Assuming it was Mrs. Sullivan, she called, "Come in," without thinking. Instead, Ethan entered, still dressed in a business suit, looking tired but smiling at the sight of them. "I wanted to make sure you had everything you need." "Everything and more," Megan replied, gesturing around the beautiful space. "This is incredibly generous, Ethan. Too generous." He shrugged, loosening his tie. It was sitting empty. Better that someone use it. His gaze fell on Lily, who was drowsing in Megan's arms. "How is she doing?" "Perfect," Megan said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "Would you like to hold her?" Something softened in Ethan's expression. "I would, actually." Carefully, Megan transferred the sleeping baby to his arms. Despite his evident wealth and success, there was something deeply moving about seeing Ethan, the boy who had once talked about having a family with her, holding her daughter. He cradled Lily with natural ease, his large hands gentle as they supported her tiny head. "She has your chin," he observed quietly, "and your hair." "The nurses said the same thing," Megan replied, watching them together. "Ethan, I have to ask, why are you really doing this, and don't say it's just because the house was empty?" He sighed, carefully returning Lily to her arms. "Let's sit down." They moved to the living room, where Ethan took a seat across from her. For a moment he seemed to struggle with his words, unusual for someone normally so articulate. "When I saw you in that delivery room," he finally said, "it brought back everything. Not just what we had, but who I was then. The person who wanted to change the world, who cared more about helping people than making money." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Megan's heart ache. "Somewhere along the way, I became someone else. The companies, the foundation, they do good work, but it's all so removed. I spend more time in boardrooms than with patients now." "But you've helped countless women with your maternal health clinics," Megan pointed out. "I read about your work in Tanzania." "Yes, but I fund those initiatives from afar. I visit twice a year for photo ops and board meetings." He looked down at his hands. "When I delivered Lily, it was the first time in years I'd felt that direct connection to why I became a doctor in the first place." Megan studied him, seeing behind the polished exterior to the idealistic student she'd once loved. "You're not happy," she realized. A rueful smile crossed his face. "I have a 10,000 square foot house I'm never in, more money than I can spend, and a schedule so packed my assistant schedules my meals. Success looks different than I imagined." "Is there someone special in your life?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "There was," he admitted. "Caroline, a pediatric surgeon. We were engaged for almost a year, but she broke it off 6 months ago. Said I was married to my work, that I'd never make time for a family." He met Megan's gaze directly. "Ironic, isn't it? You left because your music career had to come first. Caroline left because my career came first." The parallel wasn't lost on Megan. "I'm sorry, Ethan. Truly." He shrugged. "It was probably for the best, but seeing you again, meeting Lily, it's made me reevaluate some things." He hesitated, then asked, "What about you? Any regrets about the path you chose?" The question hit deep. 4 years ago, she'd been so certain that leaving Boston, leaving Ethan, for the prestigious position in New York, had been the right decision. Now, sitting in his guest house with her newborn daughter, unemployed and alone, the answer wasn't so clear. "Some days," she admitted, "the music was everything I hoped it would be, at least for a while. But I never anticipated how lonely success could feel without someone to share it with." Their eyes met in shared understanding, years of separate experiences, somehow bringing them to the same conclusion. The moment stretched, charged with unspoken possibilities, until Lily stirred with a small cry, breaking the spell. "I should let you rest," Ethan said, standing up. "I'll be away most of tomorrow, board meetings in New York, but Mrs. Sullivan will check in, and Frank is available if you need to go anywhere." He headed for the door, then turned back. "There's something else you should know. After you mentioned your situation, I made some calls to colleagues at the Boston Symphony and Berklee College of Music. There's an opening for a piano instructor at Berklee starting next semester, and the symphony has auditions for section pianists next month. I took the liberty of putting your name forward for both." Megan stared at him, stunned. "You did what?" "Just opened doors," he clarified quickly. "Whether you walk through them is entirely your choice, but you're too talented to be giving lessons to children who don't practice." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. Checking it, he grimaced. "I have to take this. Tokyo office again." He moved toward the door. "Make yourself at home, Megan, truly." After he left, Megan sat in silence, processing the whirlwind her life had become. In the span of 3 days, she'd given birth, reunited with her ex, and now found herself living in his guest house, while he used his connections to rebuild the career she'd sacrificed so much for. The next morning, Megan woke to a text from Ethan. "Had to leave for NY earlier than planned. Back late tonight. Mrs. S will bring breakfast. Piano is tuned if you're interested." The reminder of the grand piano in the living room was tempting. Since her unceremonious dismissal from the Philharmonic, Megan had barely touched a keyboard, too heartbroken by the loss of the career she'd sacrificed everything for. But as she fed Lily in the quiet morning light, her fingers itched with forgotten melodies. After breakfast, with Lily napping in her bassinet, Megan found herself drawn to the piano. She sat at the bench, running her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them. Then, almost without conscious decision, she began to play, softly at first, then with growing confidence as muscle memory took over. She lost track of time, moving from Chopin to Debussy to her own improvisations. For the first time in months, the weight of her circumstances lifted, replaced by the pure joy of creation. She didn't notice Mrs. Sullivan quietly entering to leave lunch, or the older woman slipping away with a smile. She was deep in a particularly complex passage when a voice behind her said, "You still play beautifully." Megan's hands froze on the keys as she turned to find Ethan standing in the doorway, still in his business suit, but with his tie loosened, watching her with an expression that made her heart race. "I thought you weren't back until tonight," she said, flustered. "I rescheduled some things." He moved into the room, glancing toward the bedroom. "Lily?" "Sleeping, finally." She was fussy all afternoon. Megan stood up from the piano, suddenly self-conscious. "Thank you for this." She gestured toward the instrument. "I didn't realize how much I missed it." Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Music was never just a career for you. It was part of who you are." He hesitated, then added, "I called David Chen at Berkeley again today. He'd like to meet you next week if you're interested in the teaching position." Before Megan could respond, her phone rang. Penny's ringtone. She answered quickly, relieved to hear her sister had finally landed in Boston. "I can come get you right away," Penny said. "Where are you staying?" Megan looked at Ethan, standing in the luxurious guest house he'd offered without hesitation, despite their complicated history. For reasons she wasn't ready to examine, she said, "I found a temporary place." "Actually, would it be all right if we meet tomorrow instead? I'm pretty exhausted today." After ending the call, she turned to find Ethan watching her with an unreadable expression. "You didn't tell her you're staying here," he observed. "It's complicated to explain," Megan admitted. Ethan stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same one he'd worn in medical school, she realized with a pang. "Is it? Because from where I stand, it's very simple. You needed help. I was in a position to offer it." "Nothing between us has ever been simple, Ethan." Something shifted in his eyes, determination, perhaps, or resolve. "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we've both been overthinking for 4 years." And before she could process his words, he leaned down and kissed her. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if Ethan was giving her every opportunity to pull away. But when Megan's lips responded to his, the years between them seemed to vanish. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened with an intensity that left her breathless. It was familiar, yet new, the same connection they'd always shared, but tempered by years of separate experiences, of growth and change. When they finally broke apart, Megan stepped back, her mind reeling. "Ethan, A cry from the bedroom interrupted whatever she might have said. Lily was awake, her timing impeccable. Ethan's hands dropped from Megan's waist as reality reasserted itself between them. "I should check on her," Megan said, already moving toward the bedroom. Ethan nodded, running a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture again. "I'll give you some space. Dinner's at 8 in the main house if you'd like to join me, no pressure." He headed for the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I don't regret that. Not for a second." After he left, Megan lifted Lily from her bassinet, cradling the fussing infant against her shoulder. "What am I doing, little one?" she whispered, her lips still tingling from Ethan's kiss. "This is exactly the kind of complication we don't need right now." Yet as she changed and fed Lily, Megan couldn't stop her thoughts from circling back to the moment in Ethan's arms, to the feeling that had surged through her, like coming home after a long, cold journey. It was dangerous territory. She'd barely recovered from giving birth, was effectively homeless, unemployed, and wholly responsible for a newborn. Getting involved with anyone, let alone her complicated ex, was the height of foolishness. But at 8 o'clock, with Lily fed, changed, and sleeping peacefully, Megan found herself walking the stone path to the main house, drawn by forces she wasn't ready to name. Ethan answered the door himself, now dressed in jeans and a casual button-down, looking younger and more like the man she'd once known. "You came," he said, his smile warming his eyes. "I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I," she admitted, as he led her through the stunning modern interior to a kitchen that would make professional chefs envious. Unlike the rest of the house, which had the polished, impersonal feel of a space rarely used, the kitchen showed signs of actual living: cookbooks with marked pages, a well-used espresso machine, herbs growing in pots on the windowsill. "You cook now?" she asked, genuinely surprised. In medical school, Ethan had subsisted almost entirely on takeout and frozen meals. He grinned, pouring her a glass of sparkling water. "One of the few hobbies I can manage between flights and meetings. It's either this or answering more emails." He gestured toward a baby monitor on the counter. "I took the liberty of setting up the receiver from the guest house. We'll hear if Lily wakes up." The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her more than she wanted to admit. Throughout dinner, a delicious risotto that Ethan prepared with surprising skill, they carefully avoided discussion of their kiss, focusing instead on catching up on the years between them. Ethan described the early days of his medical software company, how a scheduling algorithm he'd developed during residency had evolved into a comprehensive patient management system now used in hospitals worldwide. Megan shared stories from her time with the Philharmonic, the thrill of performing at Carnegie Hall, the grueling rehearsal schedules. "Why didn't you call me when the orchestra let you go?" Ethan asked as they lingered over dessert. "Or when Jack left, I would have helped." Megan traced the rim of her water glass, considering her answer. "Pride, mostly. I'd made such a point of choosing my career over our relationship. Coming back with my tail between my legs felt impossible." She met his gaze. "And what would I have said? Sorry I broke your heart, but I've messed up my life and need help." "Yes," he said simply. "That's exactly what friends do for each other." "Were we still friends, Ethan, after how things ended?" He was quiet for a moment. "I was angry for a long time, hurt, but I never stopped caring about you, Megan, never stopped wondering if you were happy, if the choice had been worth it." The honesty in his voice compelled her own. "It was, for a while. The music, the recognition, it was everything I'd dreamed of. But then," she sighed, "the politics of the orchestra world, the constant competition, the loneliness. By the time I met Jack, I was already questioning everything. And then, when I got pregnant—" "Did you love him?" Ethan asked, the question clearly difficult for him. "I thought I did," she answered truthfully. "But looking back, I think I was mostly in love with the idea of stability, of having someone to come home to. Jack was safe, predictable, until he wasn't." The baby monitor crackled with Lily's fussing, saving Megan from further confessions. "I should go check on her," she said, standing up. "Of course." Ethan walked her to the door. "Megan, about this afternoon—" "It's okay," she interrupted. "We don't need to analyze it. We got caught up in the moment, in old memories." His expression grew serious. "Is that what you think happened?" Before she could answer, Lily's cries grew more insistent through the monitor. "I really do need to go," Megan said, slipping past him. "This conversation isn't over," he called after her, his voice carrying in the quiet night. The next morning, Megan was awakened by a text from Penny. "At your landlord's office fighting about the mold situation. Where are you staying? Need to see my niece." Reality came crashing back. This temporary sanctuary with Ethan wasn't her life. It was an extraordinary interlude that couldn't last. She had responsibilities, decisions to make, a future to build for Lily. Getting lost in whatever was happening between her and Ethan would only complicate things further. She texted Penny the address, then spent the morning alternating between caring for Lily and anxiously watching the driveway for her sister's arrival. When Penny finally pulled up in her rental car shortly before noon, Megan was waiting on the guest house porch, Lily bundled in her arms. Penny emerged from the car, took one look at the property, and let out a low whistle. "Holy shh!" She caught herself, glancing at the baby. "Holy smokes, Meg. When you said temporary place, I was picturing a friend's spare room, not a mansion in Brookline." She hurried up the steps to embrace her sister and meet her niece. "Whose place is this? And why didn't you tell me you had friends in such high places?" "It's complicated," Megan hedged, leading Penny inside. "Complicated how?" Penny asked, glancing around the luxurious interior. "And why do you look like you haven't slept? Is Lily keeping you up all night?" "Not exactly." Megan took a deep breath. "You remember Ethan Reed from medical school?" Penny's eyes widened. "The guy whose heart you broke when you left for New York? What about him?" "This is his guest house. He was the doctor who delivered Lily." "Wait, what?" Penny sank onto the sofa, staring at her sister in disbelief. "Your ex-boyfriend delivered your baby, and now you're living in his guest house?" "Meg, that's not complicated, that's insane." Before Megan could explain further, the front door opened and Ethan himself appeared, carrying a small gift bag. He stopped short at the sight of Penny. "Sorry, I should have knocked," he said. "I just wanted to drop this off for Lily." He placed the bag on a side table, then extended his hand to Penny. "Ethan Reed, you must be Penny. Megan's told me a lot about you." Penny shook his hand, her expression a mixture of surprise and calculation. "Wish I could say the same, but apparently my sister's been keeping secrets." She shot Megan a look that clearly said, "We'll discuss this later." An awkward silence fell until Lily began to fuss. "I should feed her," Megan said, grateful for the excuse to escape the tension. "Penny, why don't you join me in the bedroom? Ethan, we'll catch up later." Once in the bedroom with the door closed, Penny rounded on her. "Okay, spill everything, now." As Megan fed Lily, she recounted the entire improbable series of events: Ethan appearing in her delivery room, his offer of the guest house, the kiss, last night's dinner. With each revelation, Penny's expression grew more incredulous. "Let me get this straight," she said when Megan finished. "The guy you dumped 4 years ago is now a billionaire doctor who's offering you a place to stay, kissing you senseless, and using his connections to revive your music career. Meg, this isn't real life. This is the plot of a romance novel." Megan shook her head. "It's not like that, he's just being kind." "Men like that, successful, powerful men, don't do anything without a reason," Penny insisted. "What does he want from you?" "Nothing," Megan protested. "He's not like that. He never was." Penny's expression softened. "Honey, I know you want to believe that, but people change. Success changes them. You need to be careful, for your sake and Lily's." The conversation left Megan unsettled. Was Penny right? Was there an ulterior motive behind Ethan's generosity? Yet everything in her resisted that interpretation. The Ethan she'd known had been unfailingly decent, generous to a fault. The kiss had been impulsive, yes, but not calculated. After Penny left, with promises to return the next day to help Megan look at apartments, Megan found herself restless. With Lily napping, she wandered out to the garden, trying to sort through her tangled emotions. She was so absorbed in thought that she didn't hear Ethan approach until he spoke. "Your sister doesn't trust me." Megan turned to find him watching her, his expression guarded. "Penny is protective. She's been through this whole ordeal with me. Jack leaving, losing my job, the apartment issues. She has every right to be cautious," he acknowledged. "But I hope you know my offer comes with no expectations, Megan. If you want to leave tomorrow, Frank will take you anywhere you need to go." The sincerity in his eyes made her chest tighten. "Why are you doing all this, Ethan? The truth, this time." He was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the carefully landscaped grounds. "When I saw you in that delivery room, it was like the universe was giving me a second chance. Not with you, necessarily, but to remember what matters. I've spent 4 years building companies, making money, winning awards, and I've never been more lonely." He turned to face her fully. "I don't expect anything from you, Megan, but I won't pretend I don't still have feelings for you, because I do. I probably always will. That kiss wasn't an accident or a momentary lapse. It was the most honest thing I've done in years." His words hung in the air between them, a truth too powerful to dismiss, but too complicated to simply accept. Before Megan could respond, her phone rang, a Boston area code she didn't recognize. "Hello," she answered, watching Ethan's face. "Miss Harper, this is David Chen from Berklee College of Music. Dr. Reed mentioned you might be interested in our piano instructor position. I'd love to schedule an interview at your convenience." As the conversation continued, Megan's mind raced. This was exactly what she needed, a fresh start, a way to use her talents while providing for Lily. Yet it had come through Ethan's connections, another act of generosity she hadn't asked for. After ending the call, she looked up to find Ethan watching her expectantly. "They want to interview me next week," she told him. "Ethan, I appreciate everything you've done, but I can't build my future on your charity. I need to stand on my own 2 feet, for Lily's sake as much as mine." To her surprise, he smiled. "I completely agree. That's why I only made the introduction. The rest is up to you, your talent, your experience, your interview. I have no influence over whether they hire you. And if they do, if I can afford my own place?" Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. "Then you'll move out of the guest house with my blessing and my friendship. But Megan," he stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of grey in his blue eyes. I hope you'll consider another possibility, that this, us, might be worth exploring again. Not because you need my help or I need to play hero, but because some connections are too rare to walk away from twice. In that moment, looking up at the man who had once been her future, who had delivered her daughter into the world, who had offered sanctuary when she needed it most, Megan felt the walls she'd built around her heart begin to crumble. "I have an interview next Tuesday," she said softly, "and Penny's helping me look at apartments tomorrow." His face fell slightly, but he nodded. "I understand. But," she continued, reaching for his hand, "maybe we could have dinner again tomorrow night, just to talk about possibilities." The smile that spread across Ethan's face was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "I'd like that very much." As if on cue, Lily's cries came through the baby monitor Ethan had clipped to his belt. Without hesitation, he said, "Let's go check on her together." Walking back to the guest house, Ethan's hand warm in hers, Megan felt something she hadn't experienced in a very long time. Hope, not just for a job or an apartment, but for a future where she wouldn't have to choose between her music and love, where Lily would have both parents in her life, even if one had entered it in the most unexpected way possible. 3 months later, Megan stood in the wings of Berkeley's main performance hall, watching as Ethan cradled Lily in the front row. Her daughter's dark curls were now more pronounced, her smile quick to appear whenever she caught sight of her mother. Beside them sat Penny, who had finally warmed to Ethan after witnessing his unwavering support as Megan established herself at Berkeley. "5 minutes, Professor Harper," the stage manager called, using the title Megan was still getting used to. She nodded, adjusting the sleeves of her concert dress. This faculty recital would be her first public performance since leaving the Philharmonic. More importantly, it would be her first time playing for Ethan since their unexpected reunion, unless she counted the quiet evenings in his living room, Lily sleeping nearby as they rediscovered each other through music and conversation. She hadn't moved into the main house, insisting on maintaining her independence in the guest house until she was certain of their path forward. But each day the boundaries between their lives blurred a little more. Ethan had restructured his companies to allow him more time in Boston, returning to patient care 2 days a week at the hospital. He'd been there for Lily's first smile, had helped through sleepless nights and fussy evenings. And each day Megan fell a little more in love with the man he'd become, still brilliant and passionate, but now tempered with wisdom and patience. The man who had delivered her daughter and, in the process, delivered her back to herself. As the stage manager signaled her entrance, Megan took a deep breath and stepped into the spotlight. Her eyes found Ethan and Lily immediately, his proud smile giving her courage. 4 years ago she'd chosen music over love, believing she couldn't have both. Now, against all odds, she was discovering that sometimes life's most beautiful compositions arise from its most unexpected arrangements. Her fingers touched the keys and she began to play, not just for the audience, but for the tiny family taking shape in the front row, for the future that had found her when she least expected it, in the delivery room where her past and present had collided to create something entirely new.